The Israelites, God's chosen people, found themselves in dire straits. For 7 long years, they suffered under the brutal oppression of the Midianites. These nomadic raiders swept through their land like a swarm of locusts, devouring their crops and livestock. The Israelites lived in constant fear, hiding in caves and mountain strongholds. Their cries for deliverance reached the heavens. In the midst of this despair, God heard their pleas. He chose a young man named Gideon from the tribe of Manasseh to be their deliverer. Gideon was an unlikely hero, coming from a humble family and wrestling with doubts. God's messenger appeared to Gideon, proclaiming him a mighty warrior. Despite his initial hesitation, Gideon began to respond to God's call. He built an altar to the Lord, a symbol of his growing faith and commitment. Gideon was stepping into his role as a leader, ready to face the daunting challenge ahead. Gideon, now emboldened by God's promise, issued a call to arms. He sent messengers throughout the land, summoning the Israelites to join him in the fight against the Midianites. The response was overwhelming. Men from different tribes, weary of oppression and longing for freedom, flocked to Gideon's banner. The Israelite army assembled, a force of over 32,000 strong. However, God had a different plan. He knew that if the Israelites won with such a large army, they would boast of their own strength. God wanted to demonstrate his power unequivocally. He instructed Gideon to reduce the size of his army. This command must have seemed perplexing to Gideon. Yet, Gideon trusted in God's wisdom, even when it seemed counterintuitive. The process of reducing the army would be a test of faith for all the assembled Israelites. God's instructions for reducing the army were specific. First, he told Gideon to send home anyone who was afraid. 22,000 men overcome by fear chose to leave. This left Gideon with only 10,000 men. However, God told Gideon that the army was still too large. He wanted to demonstrate that victory would come not through human might, but through divine intervention. God then instructed Gideon to bring the remaining men to the water. There, he would provide another test. This next stage of selection would be even more surprising. The remaining soldiers, unaware of the divine plan unfolding, marched towards the water, their fate hanging in the balance. Gideon led the remaining 10,000 men down to the water's edge. God instructed Gideon to observe how the men drank. Those who lapped the water like a dog, keeping their eyes on their surroundings, were to be kept. Those who knelt down to drink, putting their guard down, were to be sent home. Out of the 10,000 men, only 300 lapped the water like a dog. The rest, the vast majority, knelt down to drink. Gideon must have been astonished at the small number remaining. 300 men against the vast Midianite army seemed like an impossible scenario. Yet, Gideon trusted in God's plan. These 300 men, the chosen few, were now ready to face the challenge ahead. Their faith tested and their resolve strengthened. Gideon now stood with his 300 men, a small band of warriors against a seemingly insurmountable foe. They represented the heart of Israel, those who were fully committed to the fight. Their small number was a testament to God's plan to achieve victory through divine intervention. These 300 warriors were not necessarily the strongest or most experienced soldiers. They were ordinary men, chosen for their unwavering faith and obedience. Gideon addressed his small army, reminding them of God's promise. He shared his own faith and determination, inspiring them to face the challenge ahead. The 300 men prepared for battle. They were armed not with conventional weapons, but with trumpets, empty jars, and torches. This unconventional weaponry seemed absurd in the face of a powerful enemy. Yet it was part of God's plan, a strategy designed to create confusion and panic among the Midianites. As Gideon and his men prepared for their daring night raid, Gideon sought further reassurance from God. Under the cover of darkness, Gideon crept down to the edge of the Midianite camp with his servant Purah. There they overheard a conversation between 2 Midianite soldiers. One soldier recounted a dream he had just had, a dream that spoke of Gideon's impending victory. In the dream, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the Midianite camp, striking a tent and causing it to collapse. The other soldier interpreted the dream as a sign of Gideon's imminent triumph. This overheard conversation was the confirmation Gideon needed. It was a divine message, delivered through the enemy's own words. Gideon's heart must have soared with renewed faith and confidence. He returned to his men, his spirit bolstered by the divine confirmation. He shared the dream and its interpretation with his warriors. They were ready to face the enemy, empowered by divine assurance. Gideon's battle plan was unconventional. Instead of traditional weapons, his 300 men were armed with trumpets, empty jars, and torches hidden within the jars. Gideon divided his 300 men into 3 companies, positioning them around the enemy camp under the cover of darkness. At Gideon's signal, the 3 companies simultaneously broke their jars, revealing the blazing torches within. They blew their trumpets, creating a cacophony of sound that reverberated through the night. They shouted, "For the Lord and for Gideon!" The Midianites, awakened from their sleep to this unexpected chaos, were plunged into fear and disarray. The unconventional weaponry, combined with the precise timing and execution of the plan, proved to be remarkably effective. The Midianites, in their panic, began to attack each other. The carefully orchestrated plan of Gideon, guided by divine wisdom, had turned the Midianites' vast numbers against themselves. The sudden illumination, the blaring trumpets, and the war cries of Gideon's men had a devastating effect on the Midianite camp. The darkness, which had once provided them with a sense of security, now became a source of terror. They could not see clearly what was happening, and their imagination magnified the threat. The Midianites, in their panic, began to attack each other. In the darkness and chaos, they mistook their own comrades for the enemy. The noise and confusion escalated, spreading like wildfire throughout the camp. The Midianites, overwhelmed by fear and disorientation, began to flee in all directions. Their once formidable army, now a disorganized mob, was routed by a force a fraction of their size. Gideon's small band of 300 warriors had achieved a miraculous victory. Their victory was a testament to the power of faith, obedience, and divine intervention. Gideon's story is a powerful testament to the importance of faith and courage in the face of adversity. He started as a doubter, hiding from his enemies, but he transformed into a courageous leader who trusted in God's guidance. His journey from insecurity to unwavering faith is an inspiration to us all. The victory over the Midianites was not a result of military prowess or superior numbers. It was a divine victory orchestrated by God through Gideon's obedience and the faith of his small band of warriors. This story reminds us that true strength comes not from human effort alone, but from reliance on God's power and wisdom. Gideon's story also highlights the importance of humility. God intentionally reduced the size of the Israelite army to prevent them from boasting about their own strength. Gideon's legacy continues to inspire us today. His story teaches us to face our fears with courage, to trust in God's guidance, and to give him the glory for every victory. Gideon's story is not just an ancient tale, it holds profound relevance for us today. We all face challenges and obstacles that seem insurmountable. We may feel inadequate like Gideon, doubting our ability to overcome the difficulties we encounter. Yet Gideon's experience teaches us that with faith and trust in a higher power, we can conquer even the most daunting challenges. Like Gideon, we may be tempted to rely on our own strength and resources. However, Gideon's story reminds us that true victory comes through reliance on God. When we surrender our fears and anxieties to him, he can empower us to overcome obstacles that seem impossible on our own. Gideon's unwavering commitment to God's plan inspires us to stand firm in our faith. It encourages us to be true to our convictions, even in the face of opposition. When we face seemingly impossible situations, we can draw strength from Gideon's example and trust that with faith, courage, and divine guidance, we too can achieve victory.